Miguel. We don't really know what we're doing just now because there's nobody to do the tech stuff. So I just put on some music because it's appropriate music, you know, really appropriate. In fact, this is the best. You know, when you kind of think of Indian music and you think of Ravi Shankar and you think of those days, this is the real stuff. It's like, wow. Hey, I'm really getting into this tech now because I've realized that I can actually lower the sound. I couldn't do that before, could I, babe? This is like, whoa. Yeah, I'm taking over. We have David.
Wow.
Good. Now, I'm tempted to get started soon. What does everybody do? Avner's here, good, and David. David, I've inadvertently turned on the recording to the cloud. Before, okay. I'd actually like to record to, here we go, to this computer. I'm sending it, so who's hosting?
It's okay, Paul, I approved you. You can record to your computer.
Cool. Wow, here we all are. I'm playing disc jockey at the moment just to introduce things. This is the Indo Jazz Suite by, who was it? John Mayer and Joe Harriott. And I had the pleasure of meeting Joe Harriott, the saxophonist, once, and I shook his hand. It's always nice to meet the real power behind the music that you grew up with and actually like have that moment of, I've met him, you know, for what it's worth, but I can remember meeting him. So, ought to get on with this talk, really. So I'm going to turn off that music. Is that right, Avner? David, am I free to go now?
Yes, you are free to go, Paul.
That sounded like Roland.
Yes.
Oh, we're all here. That's cool.
Yes, we are all here. And I took my 1960 shirt on for this.
And now, I was saying that I was introducing it with the Indo Jazz Suite. I'm actually going to introduce it with a bit of Tecktronic music. It's actually, what is it? Anybody want to tell me what it is? It's a tambura, anyway. It's a little box. It's what I do. I play around with music boxes. Okie dokie. Right. So thank you everybody for coming. And I'm going to try my best to keep you engaged on the topic of Indian culture kind of getting through to us as teenagers, getting through to our generation. How did that happen? Well, for me, it's a personal story. I can't tell your stories. Everybody has their own story. They're different places on the planet. But I kind of referring to pop culture. So pop culture was like it really emanated from London and Britain. And that's not just me saying that because I'm English. It's because it's true. Okay. And I remember the moment at which I realized that something was happening. And that was because I was with a friend and his family. And somebody, I was only 13, somebody put some music on the jukebox. And I listened to it and it was quite pleasant. And then there was a break where the guitarist played a few notes. And it really got into my head. And I thought, that is, you know, like, what do you think when you feel and you hear something really amazing? And I later found out when I saw it on the television that it was the Yardbirds playing Heart Full of Soul. And I was just completely amazed. It was such a feeling. And I think that's what we really want to talk about with India. It's not a place. It's not a prescriptive set of values. It's a feeling. And on that particular music, there's a bit of history behind it. The Yardbirds were a group very much like the Rolling Stones. They were playing rhythm and blues. And they had as their guitarist at that time, Eric Clapton, who was a big blues enthusiast. Well, he felt that the Yardbirds were getting a bit poppy and he wanted to do his blues. This is the story. And they'd made a record called For Your Love that featured a harpsichord. Well, that was unusual for a pop song to have a fiddly diddly instrument like a harpsichord. And when he left, their next record, which was their next composition, which was written by the same guy, they thought, well, let's feature another instrument. And on that occasion, they decided to feature a sitar. Nobody else had featured a sitar on a pop record before. And the guy who wrote that, who played that, I was talking about this with a neighbor, and he said, oh, yeah, that was Ravi Shankar. And I said, no, it wasn't. Ravi Shankar wasn't part of the equation. It was a guy from the local Indian restaurant. They shipped in a guy from two guys from the local Indian restaurant, one a sitarist, the other a tabla player, and they played bloody well. I mean, you can hear it on YouTube. You can find that recording. And Jeff Beck, who was the new guitarist, was like stunned. It's like, hang on, he's got a new gig. He's following Eric Clapton, and on the first record they released, he's not on it. There's this Indian guy playing sitar. Well, he didn't accept that, and he borrowed his friend's tone bender, which is like a little foot unit which squares off the waves of the sound, if you get that. And he worked out how to play what the sitarist was playing, but in terms of guitar, and he created history. And his friend, Jimmy Page, went on to create a different sort of history. And actually, Jimmy Page bought that very sitar off the sitarist. So I know my onions. I'm telling you how it is. Okay, so Heart Full of Soul kind of started it all off. And very shortly after, you remember that this sitarist came from an Indian restaurant. I don't know how it was for you. For me, one of my first initiations into India was going to an Indian restaurant with my parents. My father was vegetarian. We didn't go to the restaurants very often. He was quite particular. And we went to a vegetarian, well, an Indian restaurant and had Indian food. And it was delightful. But one of the things that confused me was that they sold ladies' fingers. And as a child, I couldn't really process that, the idea that I was going to eat ladies' fingers. So I think I passed those up. But I did have banana fritters, which were absolutely excellent. Why I'm mentioning the restaurant thing is because there's a theme here. When the Beatles made Help, I don't know if you've all watched that film. Originally, it was called 8 Arms to Hold You. And it was like a big 8-armed idol, like an Indian idol, like a Kali or whatever. 8 arms, beetle arms, 2 each, makes 8. And the film was basically about an Indian cult, a Kali cult, who was after after a special ring, which Ringo had, and this Kali cult was trying to track him down, and they were going to even cut his finger off to get the ring back. But incidentally, and the Beatles had nothing to do with this story was written for them for that film, and they found themselves in a movie about an Indian cult. I mean, you can't make this up, can you really? And they went on set, and I'm going to try and bring up some pictures at this point, because they went on set, and Paul McCartney, oh, help me, discovered a load of, he found the instruments that they got set up in the restaurant scene. This isn't working. I set it up beforehand. I really planned this. Ha! So much for planning, huh? Anyway, I'm going to come back. I'm not going to worry about this.
Take your time. Take
Really?
your time, Paul. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll have a look a bit more. It's just, oh, might be in this one. Yeah, I've got it. Okay. Is there a picture of my books on this one?
Yes.
Okay, these are books like what I've written. So if there's anybody here who doesn't know, I am a published author person, and that is the swatch of books that I've published so far. So any End of Vanity, that's a little idol that my uncle gave me. It's a very small one, it's only a few inches high, but I don't know why he gave it to me. And I asked him after many years, I went back to him and I said, why did you give me that? Because I think it triggered something in me, right? Why did you give me that? And he said, oh, I don't know, I just gave it to you. So that's it. Anyway, there's your 7 arms and 8 arms out of the Help movie. Did everybody realize that that's what it was all about, the thuggy cult? Well, there's Paul McCartney in the restaurant scene with what's her name, Eleanor Bron, and you can see a tabla player at the back. And so that was when the Beatles first lighted on Indian instruments. And contrary to your expectation, it was actually Paul McCartney who got photographed playing with the sitar, and he's the first recorded Beatle with a sitar.
Paul,
so there you have it.
Paul, can you enlarge picture by picture?
Is that not big?
No, it's just the whole, all of them.
But that's big to me. Can you not see that big?
No.
They're all big to me.
No, it's all together on one page.
Oh, I can't put them all on one page. No, I wouldn't know how to do that. Anyway,
just click on them.
How do you mean?
Clicking on them, one after the other.
No, it's not going to happen.
Oh.
So that was the record that I was playing earlier. If anybody really grooved to that record, which I'll give you another little bit of. Isn't it good? I'll talk about that a bit more later, if I may. Thank you for indulging me. It's very disorganized, but it's how it is. You know, I'm not getting paid for this. That's what a friend says when he gives talks. He does local history, and he assures us, I don't charge them. You know, as if that's an excuse for lousing up. I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. Anyway, back to the topic. Where was I? So there we go. And then, of course, you know, George Harrison got a bit interested in the sitar. So he beetled off down to Oxford Street in London, and he bought himself a cheap sitar and fell hopelessly in love with things Indian. I think there was a space for him. And he met Ravi Shankar sometime later. And before he met him, he made Norwegian wood. I don't really understand why they put a sitar on Norwegian wood, but they did, and it's history, isn't it? Who really impressed me was Donovan. Donovan came on American television in March '66, and he brought along his friend Sean Phillips, a Canadian, and they were just mind-blowing, the two of them. I mean, for heaven's sake, Donovan playing acoustic guitar and singing, Sean Phillips playing sitar, and they just absolutely nailed the songs that they were playing, and it was so moving and it was so beautiful. And then those songs were re-recorded, and he made the album Sunshine Superman. So I think Donovan was in many ways the first to convey real beautiful playing in the pop scene. Although some people would think it was the Rolling Stones with that amazing lick in Paint It Black. That was very moody and amazing. And in fact, Ravi Shankar came over and the Yardbirds interviewed him. It's kind of ironic because the Yardbirds had put sitars on the map, and there they were looking up to the man who was famous in that world. In some ways, he should have been looking up to them because they gave him his meal ticket for the rest of his career. That's my opinion. Anybody can challenge that. Anyway, look, the thing being is that we're talking India, and few of us, especially me, knew very much about India other than what we picked up at school in geography about the monsoon, about the history, that there'd been stuff going on there. But we were pretty ignorant. I mean, pretty ignorant set of people about everything, let alone India. But one thing that I noticed when I was reading a pop music paper is that Donovan had been charged with possession of Indian hemp. And I was quite curious as to what Indian hemp was, that he could get arrested and have to pay money for having been arrested for it. So that was a big tick for me to find out a bit more about India. Of course, that was hashish. And what people were doing was smoking more and more hashish in Britain. In America, I believe you were smoking marijuana. Well, good luck to you. Hashish was what they were smoking in London. And they were... It wasn't because it was Indian that people were smoking it. It was because they liked the effect on them. And a lot of people were smoking an awful lot of hashish. And the Beatles were creating their kind of druggy music. And they did stuff on Revolver like Love You Too and Tomorrow Never Knows, which are iconic. I mean, they are the music of that sort of ambience. And they were taking other drugs. They took LSD. And I mention this because it has a direct link to what we're talking about. They were taking LSD and they were taking amphetamine. Now, most of us didn't know of joss sticks until that period. And then you start to smell joss sticks here and there in people's rooms, people's flats. And it's very, very pleasant, rose scented, sandalwood scented, 5 roses, all sorts of stuff. And basically, a lot of people were using the smell of the incense to mask the smell of their hash smoking because they didn't want their landlord or their parents or anybody else to know what they were smoking. I mean, it was pretty stupid, really, because they're very different perfumes. But they, and I must include myself, convinced ourselves that that was a good idea. But I'm still a heavy incense user. I've probably got more incense sticks here than I could possibly use in the rest of my life, but I love it. I love the stuff. So there was this like amalgam of people taking drugs and people getting interested in Indiana. You know, it's like, as I say, Indian restaurants, Indian styles, hippie bags and things. Hippies hadn't really come in by that time. And then something happened in Britain. Jonathan Miller, a pretty extraordinary intellectual kind of guy, put together another version of Alice in Wonderland. And instead of it being childish, he changed it. He made all the characters human. And they included some of the top acting people in Britain and some of those who weren't top, but became it, like one of the Python team was in it. But there was, let me try and remember, there was Peter Sellers in it. There was Sir John Gielgud. There were tons of people in it. It reads as a kind of ridiculous list of top actors. There was Peter Cook. Was there Dudley Moore? Maybe he was in it too. Everybody was in it. And it was stunning. I mean, like, we didn't have DVDs and videotape in those days. We just had our television sets in our memory. And I remember going into school and this was like, what happened? What was that program that we saw? It was kind of mind-bending. It was a very strange retelling of the story, and it was very beautifully portrayed. And what we didn't know at the time was that the soundtrack had been put together by Ravi Shankar. If you're fortunate enough to track down the video, the DVD, or indeed you go onto YouTube, you can see Ravi Shankar actually, you know, doing that composition. They filmed him doing some of it, which is really ace. But I think personally that was huge. It was like subverting. It was like telling everybody, look for stuff that's a bit way out. Look for stuff that's a bit Indian tinged. Look for stuff that you can't readily explain. It was an impulse. If you went to school and you were pretty bored, this was the direction. It was like follow that direction. Hard to express it if you weren't there, but you know, people didn't start taking drugs because they were needing drugs. They were lured by the idea of different states of consciousness, of different tonalities, different experiences. And I'm included in that. I wasn't searching for a high. It was I was interested that there was something else that you could experience other than what you already were. And that was when I was introduced personally to the pollen of hashish. And I heard that record that I've been playing to you. And it was like totally amazing to me, especially in the state of mind that was induced by Lebanese pollen. It was fantastic, but I still love that record today. Anyway, moving on. So this society was getting more interested in different states of consciousness, and it was doing so by smoking and taking tablets and things, but it also was getting into ideas, and that's pretty much where Monterey came out. Monterey Pop Festival, which really wasn't pop. It was by that time it was a whole bunch of alternate artists. There wasn't many pop players on there, and Ravi Shankar had, he arrived. People saw the guy and it was like, what's with this? Wasn't there a Swami there? Swami Watcher? Somebody help me. Come on. Speak, somebody.
Satchidananda.
Satchidananda, I got there. Whoever it was who said it, I got there. Just there. And therefore he was influencing those people like out in the States. He was sort of saying, this is a different way to go. In fact, Mia Farrow's sister, Prudence, she got caught up with him. One of my photographs here, which I'm frightened to try showing the photographs again. I'll have to try again, but it's a bit chaotic. So yeah, she was one of his lot. And we have a photograph of her with short hair being shown how to do a particular asana. So that's good. So we're now getting this overlap. We're now seeing, it wasn't that there wasn't anybody teaching yoga. It wasn't that there wasn't anybody teaching meditation, but they were not mainstream and they were not pop. I mean, Maharishi he'd been teaching meditation since 1955. We're now talking about 66, 67. He'd been round the houses. He'd been round the world. What do they say? 7 times. He'd done all these world tours. A lot of people knew about meditation, but most of them were straights. They were not people who spent their time with spliffs or taking LSD or taking other drugs. They're mainly ordinary people with ordinary diet of everyday life. And that's not a judgment, it's how it was. Well, the Beatles had got very interested in mysticism via LSD again, but also through the Hare Krishna people, and also through reading that book that they made famous by putting some of the guys on the front of their Sgt. Pepper album. And the book, as you all know, and I have to look it up, it's Autobiography of a Yogi, wasn't it? It was what they read, and when they went to see Roland, you keep cutting out. Sorry, I'm reading a message that's coming out here. This is ad lib, excuse me. Anyway, what will we say? Yeah, the Beatles were into Yogananda's book, which is, for those who have read it, it's a very interesting book about spiritual values, about meditation, about pranayama, and Indian values. There's a fair amount of exciting stuff that's sort of like mystical, magical stuff. And that really attracted the Beatles. I don't think they were so interested in meditation at that time, but they were interested in the idea that you could be in two places at the same time, that you could manifest out of nothing, amazing thing. So they got kind of interested in him. And Pattie Boyd had got interested in meditating because she was so bored. One Sunday, she was on her own and she was totally bored, and she was reading the Sunday Times, and there was an ad and it said, come to so-and-so place to get taught meditation. And she'd been with George in India, and Ravi had obviously talked about meditation. And I think it was him that introduced them to the book Autobiography of a Yogi, as he introduced them to all sorts of books. Anyway, she thought, I'm going to get interested in meditation. And she was well ahead of the game. All the other Beatles didn't catch up for 6-9 months or more. But when Maharishi announced that he was retiring, and he did, and he repeatedly stated that he was going to retire, they kind of thought, this is our last chance to go and see the yogi. Remember, they'd read the book Autobiography of a Yogi, so they got the word yogi. They wanted to go and see a yogi, but they had a preconception of what a yogi was. They didn't know what Maharishi was because they'd seen him on the television, they'd seen him on the posters, but I mean, I had, but I didn't know that he taught meditation. I just knew he was some Indian guy. I mean, why would I know that he taught meditation? Even if you put the word meditation near Maharishi, you wouldn't know that he's teaching it. It's like, we were pretty vague in those days. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the level of communication, anything like what we have today. It took me to go to India to actually find out that they taught a specific teaching of meditation. It wasn't till I was actually there, right next to Maharishi's house, that I realized that he taught meditation. I mean, that, you know, they were good days, but we were very uninformed. And so why did the Beatles get involved? As I say, I think it was because it all sounded like a druggy thing. This meditation thing sounded like another drug high, but they were very informed about drugs, and they didn't find in meditation what drugs provided. In fact, Maharishi couldn't really eloquently talk about drugs. He'd been asked the year before when he was at the Kumbh Mela, he was asked about LSD and he didn't know anything about it. And he asked continually all the various aspects of how much do you need to take? How long does it last? What do you see? Because he didn't know. And yet the Beatles came and asked him, you know, what's your meditation like? Is it like LSD? So there was a bit of a mismatch. They thought that they were getting onto somebody that they weren't. Maharishi was a meditation teacher. He'd never said anything else. He was teaching a system of meditation, and over the last few years before he met them, he'd been teaching others how to teach meditation. But he wasn't, as it were, a mystic. He wasn't teaching anybody how to walk through walls. He wasn't claiming to know how to walk through. That was completely something else. And I think he was a bit bemused, but he knew they were famous. That bit he did know. He thought they were children. He'd heard about the Beatles and he formed the idea that it was a child musical group. So he was massively surprised, as he admitted, when he found they had moustaches, because he didn't think they were old enough to grow moustaches. Okay, this is truth. I've done my research. So unbelievably, instead of saying, oh, go and get taught meditation around the corner at Iddesleigh House or wherever, he actually said, would you like to come and visit me in Wales? And they said yes. And they all piled onto a train the next day, which was ridiculous. I mean, they had no security, zero security. The four of the most known faces on the planet, they all got on a public train to go up and see Maharishi. And he was inviting them to go on a course that they weren't even eligible for. the people that were on that course were rounding. They were just sitting there, meditating lots, and then having a little bit of a lecture and having a bit of a meal and doing all that over and over again over a period of days. That was their break. They'd look forward to that. And all of a sudden they got these celebrities there who'd got Mick Jagger and what's her name along as well, Marianne Faithfull. And it was kind of bizarre because why did he invite them to a course like that, a residential course? But he did, and they were initiated, and the world found out about Maharishi. Unfortunately for Maharishi, it alerted the press to start looking into him. And almost immediately after 12 years, he started to face criticism from the press, who were sort of digging through his history and say, oh, what happened when your master died? What happened here and there? And it came out in the press that there was an uneven history. So that was unfortunate. And he also got very celebrity conscious. That's as it is. But coming back to the Indianification, George Harrison had basically hung up his guitar. He no longer played guitar. Not a lot of people realize this. When he took up playing sitar, he finished playing guitar. And you say, but that's rubbish because the Beatles made Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band. Yes, he made an exception of playing guitar in the studio with the group, but that was it. He just totally got into being an Indian, and he was playing his sitar. He took his sitar to Wales. You can see him in the pictures. And he played it. He put on a little recital for all the Beatles and anybody who was there. And Maharishi, you can see the photos on the internet. So that was kind of weird. And his enthusiasm went over to making a record called Wonderwall Music. There was a crazy movie called Wonderwall, which was about like a mad professor who tried to get through a wall and view his neighbors. It's a kind of weird but very entertaining film. And George was, I think, the third person to be approached to write the music, and he really got into it. And he got his friends to do the music that was on Western instruments, but to do the Indian stuff, he flew over to Bombay, and he used like people to do with Ravi Shankar, and they were excellent musicians. And he recorded all this very, very Indian music. I mean, he wrote it, but he didn't write it. It was like pieces of well-known Indian music that he kind of virtually sampled and matched into the movie. He'd made a note of this scene or that scene, and he worked out that he needed 3 minutes to put in there. And he worked like Billy-O, and you know, all credit to him. He then wanted to make a Beatles Indian piece of music, which he did in the following way. He didn't write it himself. He used verses from the Tao Te Ching, and he put to that music that he'd recorded in India, and he put that on the flip side of Lady Madonna. Now, Lady Madonna's like a good time boogie piano music. I think it's based on Bad Penny Blues, but he put this Indian piece on the back of it, and I remember hearing it back in the day and thinking, "Oh my God!" You know, it was like, what on earth is this? It's got nothing to do with the Beatles, and in fact, it didn't have anything to do with the Beatles. It just had to do with him. I mean, I've since got to love it. If you dissociate it from the Beatles and you see it for what it is, it's a beautiful piece of music. So where are we going with this? The influence of India was seeping into all sorts of channels. The guy from the Moody Blues, Justin Hayward, he picked up a sitar, and amazingly, he just like found it. He just found so much beauty in playing the sitar. I mean, he's an astonishing guy. He's a meditator. He was taught shortly after the Beatles, transcendental meditation, that is. And I think he did astonishing stuff on the sitar. I mean, a lot of people were kind of like pulling a strand of that Indian story. A friend of mine, I'm now into name dropping. Warning, warning. A friend of mine, Lemmy, later of Motorhead, was around in that day. And yeah, he used to take drugs. That's not a surprise for most people. But maybe what is a surprise is that the drummer in his group was a tabla player. So instead of actually having a drummer out back, the guy was playing tablas, which was pretty unusual. Whilst we're on the subject of Lemmy, as far as I know, he was never into motorbikes or anything like that. It was a friend of mine, Leo, who was his flatmate, who actually called him Motorhead. And that story comes from his then girlfriend, Cynthia James. So Lemmy's had his moment of glory in this story. Actually, when I went to India, on one occasion, I went to a music shop and I saw Lemmy, a picture of Lemmy with his hands together in a shop, which I found quite funny because I never saw him as a peacenik guy. I mean, he's kind of cranked up and rock and roll. So there we have it. Enough of that. Another group that was very Indo, and that was Quintessence, and they had the reputation of spending 6 months in Britain and 6 months in India. And the lead player was a guy called Raja Ram, obviously not his born name. He was probably Roger or Ronnie or something like that. And we were gradually getting a bit of a subculture of Indianification. There was a magazine called Gandalf's Garden, and you get the occasional reference to meditation or to vegetarianism or to peacenikism or to Mahatma Gandhi or a guy called Vinoba Bhave. You probably know his name. So there was a kind of a melting pot. It wasn't precise. It was like, there's the Hare Krishnas who were frankly irritating. They looked emaciated. They wandered about the streets. I mean, they didn't bother me, but they were a little bit irritating. Okay. And then there's the story of the bells. Do you remember bells? Well, the trouble is, originally, people wore bells to indicate to one another that they'd taken LSD. And people didn't know that generally because it was a codification. And they started to sell these in the mainstream market, and holidaymakers bought them. So you got masses of people like on Blackpool or wherever, all wearing these bells. So the idea that they meant that you'd taken LSD rather kind of washed away. So, it's funny how India got these little associations. And to be honest, they weren't very much about meditation. They weren't very much about being particularly deep. It was just another flavor. It was just another way of enjoying what you were enjoying. And it wasn't just India. We had a bit of Morocco, didn't we? We had a bit of like Turkey. We had like a Greek hippie bag. The Beatles went over to Greece for a time, again, taking LSD, chanting Hare Krishna. There was a lot of cross-meshing. It wasn't a lot of serious people wanting to get interested in meditation. If anybody says that, they're lying. As far as the younger generation, perhaps older generations, yeah, it's like they're more serious and more committed, but my generation, no, very, 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 very few. And I'll tell you how many that I met. One. Okay. That's it. One. And that person happened to be a friend of mine called Yolanda. And I see Gabriel is in the, he's a watcher. His mother, in fact. So there was a connection between me and Yolanda in the fullness of time. In fact, she hitchhiked with me to India. But had I not met her, I would not have gone to India. I'm almost certain of that. Not that I wasn't interested in India, but you've got to be a pretty much of a nutcase to actually set off and hitchhike across like thousands and thousands of miles to get to India. and we didn't have enough money to fly there. It wasn't a question of us being adventurous. We didn't have the money to fly to India. It's as simple as that. If I'd have had the money, I would have flown, honest. But I walked into the room. This was before we went to India, obviously. I walked into the room. It would have been like about early afternoon on a day in 1968. And there is Yolanda sitting cross-legged on a beautifully upholstered seat in a state of tranquility. And it kind of shook me. I'm not used to people being tranquil. I'm not used to people sitting cross-legged. But there was something else about the experience. It was almost a deja vu. It was almost like, this is something that I need to pay attention to. There is something happening right now. And I couldn't place it. It was years later that I realized that she looked exactly like Lord Shiva in meditation. Not only the actual seat, the way that she was sitting, but her face and her hair, everything. And it's like at times when you make that realization, you kind of think to yourself, have I been here before? Do I come from somewhere else? I don't know the answers to either of those questions, but Yolanda was the one that triggered it insofar as, what is she doing? There's something special going on in this room. Most of us who were interested in consciousness shifts would ascribe it to this, I don't know, pink acid or blue acid or sunshine acid or something like that. But here was an emanation of peace and tranquility coming within a room without a source. I mean, I knew that Yolanda took pills of this sort, but I didn't think this had anything to do with that. And I was intrigued. And I think that that was part of why we kind of got interested in one another and looked at the idea of being kind of closer than just friends. And I'd like to say that this kind of 60s era was basically about experiences. A lot of people that I've met as meditators are searching for experiences. And on one occasion, I was on a course and I got really fed up with this guy going on about the experiences that he wanted. I said, why don't you just go and take acid? Do you know, that's what you want, really. You know, I love meditating. I love not having all these strange experiences. I love settling down. I had enough of strange experiences. I had enough of crazy times. I had enough of not being able to explain why I knew what somebody else was thinking, or seeing things that I couldn't really explain their existence. When I came to meditate, I found an absolute joy in finding a soft pillow somewhere that I could rest my crazy mind and settle down. And that hasn't changed, because I'm still basically the same organism. I'm still the same vehicle. I'm not a Maserati. I'm whatever I am. And it still gets cranked up, and I still need that pillow to settle down. And I challenge anybody who says, oh, well, yeah, but if you've been meditating that many years, you're above it, or, you know, I know you're who you are. And I'm glad that I am who I am, but I still need to settle down. And I think that that's where there's a kind of alienation between those people who seek experiences and those people who genuinely want samadhi. And that is basically drugs versus meditation. And that is my opinion. I'm not expecting anybody here to agree, but one more thing I want to say, and well, no, apparently two. I'm trying to pick up on my notes, which is more difficult than you might think, because they're all scribbled. Okay. One is a point that, where is he? Bob. Yeah, Bob. Bob mentioned to me, he was talking about India and Hinduism, and he said, it's not just religion, it's lifestyle, it's community structure, it's the arts, it's the sciences, it's psychology, it's philosophy, it's other stuff that I haven't written very clearly, history and more. So that's a point to take on, that when we're talking about India and Hinduism, we're talking about a whole raft of things that are interdependent into our lives. And also, it's like who you are. So you're creating the image of the India that you're looking for. Everybody who's been to India has encountered a different India. And if you come back from India and you say, oh, wow, it was amazing, you're doing somebody a disservice, because it might not be amazing for them. It might be really depressing. It might be really, really horrible. It's a strange thing when you go to India, stuff happens to you. Sometimes those things are good, sometimes those things are bad, and it's going to vary with everyone, and it's going to vary according to the where and when you went and who you're with. All these things go to affect it. But in my case, it did create a hunger. I got to a point where I knew that I needed to get out of Britain and go and look out there and see if anybody else is making a better job of it. One of the things, and this is another note I've just seen on my notes, is that Donovan had said rather foolishly that he was seeking the perpetual high. I'd love to look it up and find out what he said again, but I remember him saying that, the perpetual high, and I thought, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Isn't that what everybody would like? And I think that may be what was tickling my fancy when I said to my girlfriend, I'm thinking of hitchhiking to India. Do you want to come with me? Now, I want to take a break at that moment, and I want to ask the audience if there's anybody who's got anything to say, just to give me a break from talking and also express their opinion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I'm Pierre from Canada. And I just noticed when you about the seeking the high with the drugs and stuff. I was too. Even I was looking for that high and stuff, and I took drugs too when I was younger. And really, you know, the Beatles song, we talk about the Beatles, and you remind me when they sing, All You Need Is Love. But I don't know, recently it's just like when you meditate, all you need is joy. It's really that joy within. It's, for me, I don't know, it's all I need. That pure joy without, it's very simple and very quiet as well. And this is very a big difference with the high of drugs and stuff. Because I'm sure some people have experience of cosmic consciousness or higher state of consciousness with drugs. But the problem is the nervous system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your nervous system is not clear enough. You may have the experience. It's like lightning thunder, boom, but it can cause more harm than good because your nervous system is not tuned,
Oh,
not being
that's
cultured.
pushing it. I don't know if it does more harm than good, but you're very right that it had an effect. And sometimes I don't know if other people's experiences, it took you days to get over a trip. I mean, like, it was harrowing. It would take away your strength. It would, oh my God, it's as if you've been pulled through a hedge backwards for about 2 years, but you got over it and did it all again.
Yes, yes. I didn't, unfortunately, I didn't took so much high drugs, so much strong drugs,
Mm.
but yeah, thank God I didn't because I was maybe too sensitive for that. But yeah, the meditation sometimes it can be very, very powerful too because you're diving into the
Mm.
source and everything can happen. But it's nature is gentle with you. It's like it's all natural and it's like going with what your nervous system can handle, and this is big difference. Yeah.
I agree. but it's an acquired taste because some people want to have big experiences. They want to go up in a skyrocket. They want to jump off the top of a
Absolutely.
hill.
I was for I was for a long time I
Yeah.
was seeking, even though if the instruction from the very beginning was like take it as it comes.
Mm.
Well, no, I wanted to have, something, but I think with time something settled down, and
Mm.
I can say I appreciate more and more the simplicity of it. Yeah.
I'd have to say though that at the time I enjoyed both because I kind of I had a sort of a meditation routine even at the height of my craziness. So I would settle down to a point where I was absolutely comfortable within myself. I'd open my eyes, I'd look around, I'd see beautiful things in my room, my clothes hanging on clothes hangers and posters and pretty things all around the room. I smelt the insect. Everything that I looked at was magical. And I thought, it's great to be alive. And then I'd go out and I'd join my friends and be totally crackers and stay up all night and blast away at loud music. It wasn't one or the other, it was both. And again, I come back to that. I think I'm still like that. I mean, I've just bought, well, Kath has bought me a new guitar, right?
Oh,
Look at that.
beautiful.
It's going to make a lot of noise, really. And I've got other things that can make a lot of noise. I haven't, I've lost the crazy streak, but not entirely. I wouldn't want to lose it entirely.
Yeah, we keep our nature too. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what I'm
for
saying.
sure.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it's a matter of knowing how to settle down.
yeah.
I mean,
The integration, right? Yeah.
just giving this talk, it's like it's jazzed up my nervous system. And therefore, I'll probably go for a walk afterwards. And then when I settle down, I'll really appreciate it. So meditation isn't like a lifestyle for me. It's something that I do because I'm a nutter. Do you know what I mean? It's an antidote to me being enthusiastic. It's an antidote for me wanting to go for walks and climb mountains and everything else. I don't see it as an end in itself at all. Anybody else want to say anything before I do a second part to this talk? I haven't planned it, by the way. I'm just
Thank you.
living.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to say anything?
Yes.
Gabriel, I know you're out there. As I mentioned earlier, my oldest son, who is out in the States, is, I think, here, but he might have just left his Zoom on and gone off and made something in the kitchen. I don't know.
I would like to ask you something, Paul,
Yeah.
about the Yardbirds.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that movie, Blow Up.
Oh, yeah.
And this was so outspaced, and it was for me a very. Can you comment on this? The role of the movie Blow Up. It was such a new format of a movie, uncomparable to anything else.
Well, it was basically about a photographer, right? Who accidentally photographed something which was criminal, wasn't it? didn't somebody get shot or something like that?
Yes.
And he kept blowing it up and go, oh my God. And that was based on the photographer, what's his name? David Bailey. So it was basically a movie about David Bailey, whose muse and model was Jean Shrimpton, wasn't she? And
Yes.
Jean Shrimpton used to live local to me, and I can remember seeing her in Penzance a few years back, and she had a terrible cough. So I always try and personalize things. To me, you mentioning Blow Up reminds me of Jean Shrimpton, which reminds me what a terrible cough she had. But in all truth, the Yardbirds, their place in it was very impromptu, wasn't it? They had Jeff Beck doing something that he never did, and that was breaking a guitar. He never did anything like that. That was the Who that did that. And so really they needed David Bailey to do the photography and all that, and they needed the Who to do the group. And this is how it was. They used Jeff Beck and the Yardbirds, but he only trashed a very rubbishy guitar. Give him his due. It wasn't a proper guitar. It was a very, very cheap acoustic guitar, which of course he wouldn't have played anyway. So give him his due. He didn't do a Townsend and go and demolish a good bit of kit, which Townsend did a lot. And Townsend actually went through a period where he actually couldn't afford to keep smashing guitars. So when he went to the States and he started to do that, and he smashed the guitar, he had to repair it afterwards. It's ironic, isn't it? I mean, now he's a millionaire and all the rest of it. But in those days, that really cost him a lot of determination to rebuild his guitars after he smashed them. But I can't say too much about the movie. It's very faint on me now. I think it was just trying to make a movie out of the existing bits that were floating around in the atmosphere.
The other question I have, you know, Aldous Huxley. The role of Aldous Huxley with his books Heaven and Hell and Brave New World, they played a huge role in getting our mind off the normal standards.
And Doors of Perception. But that was only for people who actually read the books. Not everybody stayed literate. I mean, during that period at the end of the 60s, and we're talking about, I'd be lucky if I could understand a comic, you know, like you know, a children's comic. Oz, our magazine in London, went to a point where it no longer bothered putting any text in, and when it did, it printed it in like violet or yellow or whatever, because we came to a point whereby it was a lifestyle of being totally stoned and we didn't read. So I've had a lot of catching up to do, Roland, in terms of culture. I think it was mainly very more settled people who did all that reading. I mean, okay, I went through an age where I did read, but it wasn't Aldous Huxley, and I kind of missed that. But again, I think there's a presumption that because, say, yourself did read those books at the right time, that other people did. But in a way, that's like saying that I thought that everybody listened to Country Joe and the Fish, but they didn't. It was like only a few dozen people in London had got that album. I think he did have a big effect, because he was into mysticism, right? And he was describing different states of consciousness. He was into the Advaita side of things in the States with Gerald Hurd and people like that. And he was genuinely interested in mysticism. But I think that what I'm trying to say is that I think that was rare. I think we're talking about pop culture, and I don't think he was a part of pop culture. I don't think that 13 to sort of 17-year-olds in London were kind of reading that sort of material. You know, I'm not saying they weren't, but not around me. I would have liked it, I guess, but it didn't happen. I'm going to go for the next bit. Anybody ready for any more? Well, look, the 60s were all but fizzling out. Really, the Beatles were like on the border of breaking up. The Stones weren't doing anything useful. Bob Dylan had a motorcycle crash. Bob Dylan's Donovan's stuff was becoming increasingly puerile. most people's output was like going down, and it was being replaced with long drawn out solos. Groups like King Crimson, who, as novel as they were, did rather go on a bit. And, you know, we didn't know what the future was, but we no longer had the pop culture, the culture that was interesting, the culture that was lively, maybe free concerts. And we used to like say hi to each other in the street. You never knew each other, but just the fact that you got long hair or the fact that you got hippie clothes, you were friends automatically. It was a part of a code. And that went as well, because people started to grow their hair just as a matter of fashion. So you couldn't detect who was the real deal, who you could trust. So the 60s were going up the Swanee. And frankly, I was bored with it too. I'd taken enough to realize that I was no longer interested in taking drugs. Whatever it might appear, my enthusiasm for that time, I wasn't interested. It was like, well, what next? And there really wasn't anything next. And to be stuck in a culture, a Western culture, I found antagonistic to my well-being. And I remember going up to London on one occasion to think it out and sort of go, what shall I do next? And the Hare Krishnas were coming around. And I thought, well, perhaps they've got an answer or whatever. And I was willing them to come over and have a chat with me. And instead, they went over to these wealthy people and tried to catch money off them. And I thought, I don't think there's a lot in the Hare Krishna thing. And I was sitting around in Hyde Park, like introspecting, which is another way of saying I was borderline depressed, that I didn't know what to do next. I've been a very happy-go-lucky, a very happy person, and now I felt a bit glum. I didn't know what to do. And had I but known it, I would have walked along Hyde Park, because Jimi Hendrix was just up the way. He was staying at a hotel in Kensington Garden, and we could have had a chat about it, but we didn't. And that's life, isn't it? But it's always it's always been a matter of a slight nuisance to me that I didn't do that walk, and that I missed him the day I went into a record shop and they said to me, oh, you know, Jimi Hendrix just walked out. It's like, damn. Anyway, enough of my Jimi Hendrix stuff. What I determined in that era is that I couldn't stay in the West, that I had to travel. I had to find out what was outside of the world. We're talking about pop culture meets India, but that's a lie. It's pop culture meets internationalism. I wanted to go and see South America. I wanted to go to Australia. I wanted to go to anywhere but London. And that's what we did. We hitchhiked, and we hitchhiked across Europe. We hitchhiked across North Africa, the Middle East, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and got into India. But what was the point of going to India? Actually, what was the point of going to India? I didn't really understand, because you're just following your own light. And I didn't have a list of things to get when I got to India. Do you know, when you go shopping, it's really neat that you've said, oh, you pick up this and pick up that. And I got to India, and it was no small achievement to have got there with my girlfriend. And I suddenly thought, oh, right, now what? And I didn't have a clue, because in some strange way, I thought I was going to become like part of the religious community, that I was just going to let go of materialism and sink into some sort of God-loving community. And all they wanted to know was to find out more about God, and that I'd probably die, you know, like, don't know, matter of months or a few years. It never occurred to me that I would actually arrive in India quite healthy and with no shopping list. And therefore, I was a bit troubled by it for a few minutes. And I asked somebody, I said, do you know where Ravi Shankar lives? And he said, oh, he's in Bombay. And I said, what about this Mahar whatnot guy? And he said, oh, he's in Rishikesh. And I looked at a map and I realized that Bombay is a hell of a long way away, and Rishikesh was just up the road. So I went to see Maharishi. I didn't know that he taught meditation. I'm not a truth seeker in that sense. I didn't go around with an agenda. But when I was taught meditation, it kind of brought me back to that idea of looking after yourself, of settling down, of finding inner peace. Like Pierre was just saying, it's about the inner joy. It isn't about something else. It's about, it's right here, and it's comfortable, and it's easily integrated. And that was very satisfying to do that. And I before learning, I'd already decided to stay in Rishikesh area for at least a month. Well, actually for a month. I was quite specific. I'm going to stay here a month, I said. And it was such a dreamy place to be. I mean, people read these books about Shangri-La or some special place up in the Himalayas, and it's like, wow, you know, imagine that you went to a place where everybody was nice and there wasn't any bad vibes. But I discovered such a place which was nice with no bad vibes, you know, and that was astonishing, and it was very reassuring after all the hitchhiking taking me to India. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to England. And my girlfriend, Yolanda, Gabriel's mother, was really pissed at me. I could tell it. She stared at me like daggers. It's like, we've only just got here, you know. And she said, what about going to see where the Buddha got his enlightenment or whatever? And I'm thinking, who cares where he got his enlightenment? I'm going back to London. I'm going to take my enlightenment back to London, because I thought that by actually discovering how to be at one with oneself, there wasn't anything to look for after that. And it sounds complacent, it sounds smug, it sounds like unadventurous, but I had had all the adventure. I had had the 60s adventure. I had had all this bloody hitchhiking, etc. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, oh, do you know what? I quite like just to have a comfortable environment to live in and a regular wage. It had turned me into a straight, you know, all this traveling, all this going for God and becoming a sannyasi and all the rest of it. I ended up sort of thinking, hey, it'd be quite nice to be part of the consumer society, you know, like pay my taxes like everybody else. And I kind of still in that space. And I'm not a very good representative now of that period, because I just think, well, yeah, but what happens when you find what it is that you want? And that's what I did when I found out what I want. Unfortunately, my girlfriend Yolanda, it didn't take her long to realize that her journey was going to stay with me, and that she could go and see Bodh Gaya another day, which she did. Many years later, she did go to Bodh Gaya. So there's a happy end of that story. She did get to Bodh Gaya, and she did get more interested in Buddhism, and that's good. But I think what I'm saying is, I actually took the 60s kind of Indianification to the next level, didn't I actually bit into that Indian tablet and said, I think I need to go there to find out what it's like. And it was every bit as magical in some ways, and every bit as horrible as it was in the other ways, as one might have imagined. And every single time I've been back to India, it's had that duality. There have been times when it's been really amazing, and there have been times when it's been quite horrible. And that kind of brings us into ITMA, because I was talking with Roland, was it last year? And I was saying, do you know what? I quite like to join you on a course in India, because I haven't been back quite a few years now. And he said, oh, yeah, you could come on a course. And Avner was saying, and you could tell us, like, you could give talks. And I think, I don't know about giving talks. And so what I've done is I've converted what Avner suggested of doing talks in India. And what I said is, why don't, sorry, I'm getting an interruption. My computer's trying to talk to me. Bloody thing. I'm going to ignore it, or try to. Pick a time, restart tonight. pick a time. Now I can't get rid of it. Is that AI or is that non-AI? Give me a moment. I'll try and get rid of it. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh shit. Get rid of that thing. No. I think it's trying to encourage me to turn the computer off. Please bear with me. This is real time, folks. It's really horrible. It's trying to update the computer. I never update this computer. Anyway, what was I saying? Help me. What was I saying? That was thoroughly distracting.
We're going back to England and prepared to take up a straight kind of life.
Yeah, how well you.
But in India, your girlfriend wanted to go and meet the Buddhists.
Yes, absolutely, and she got her thing to do, and I mean it's all good. But I turned my curiosity about the 60s into a tangible adventure, and I'm glad I did that, because do you know what? I can be talking to an absolute stranger anywhere in the world, and I end up telling them the trail tales. I end up telling them that I was in this place and there was a mountain, and they were talking about wood that they found on top of the mountain. Oh yeah, and that was Mount Ararat. And you kind of think, oh yeah, that's out the Bible. And then it's like, oh, I was in North Africa and there was an aqueduct, or that's out the Roman Empire. And it's like, it's given me a legacy of stories that I never anticipated. I mean, it might make me a super bore and it might make me interesting, but one way or the other, it's given me something that I never had. And think about this too, that meditating, after I came back from India, I wasn't right. You know, you reminded me, Roland, that I got back to the straight life, but it was kind of boring. It's yeah, right. So you've done 8 hours of being a dishwasher in a kitchen at a hospital. It's like, do you know what? It's not that cosmic. And as much as living with an attractive Italian girlfriend who you're going to marry, it like, yeah, that's good, but you need other stuff in your life. You need to jam other stuff into your noddle to keep yourself entertained. And that was when I started all this kind of interest in India, about language, about culture. I dug into the Puranas, and like Bob, is Bob still on? As he had to go. He got into Hinduism. He wanted to know more about the past. And I'm still doing it. It's ridiculous. That was in 1970, 71. I'm still doing it. I'm still researching it. I'm still looking into it. And therefore, I can't say, oh, yeah, well, I was interested in the Indian connection of the 60s, but blah, blah, blah. I still am. I mean, like, shoot me, but I still am. It was Roland that asked this question. He said something like, oh, can you give a talk about, like, what was the effect of the Stones using a sitar and Paint It Black, and the Beatles and everybody? How did that have an effect on meditation? It's like, just a bit, didn't it? Just a bit. But it wasn't that we needed the Beatles to show us about meditation. They were the last people. They really were drug addicts. And when I came to research my book on the Maharishi and my book on the Beatles, I wouldn't go to them because they got it all wrong. The whole crew. You know, you get a statement like from Donovan, oh, we all turned up at a Rolls-Royce car at the airport. He didn't even travel with them. You've got Paddy Boyd saying, oh, yeah, when the boys were touring out in Australia, I got initiated. Sorry, Patty, they'd long split up touring. It was your memory is completely full. So they enjoyed themselves, but I think they were a little bit too much into the drug mix. I think that Maharishi was right in many things that he said. insofar as he didn't see it was a good thing that the Beatles got interested in him. And I would agree, because I think that he became very celebrity conscious, which isn't their problem. It was his problem. He became very over interested in being a celebrity and getting celebrity endorsement. And it confused people because people associated themselves with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and that who'd been interested in meditation. Whereas in fact, meditation's got nothing to do with rock and roll. It's got nothing to do with the pop show. It's got nothing to do with taking drugs, etc., etc. So I think in a way, to answer Roland's original thing is, I think they did more harm than good by their involvement. In terms of numbers, yeah, they have and continue to pull a lot of people towards meditation, but a lot of those people drop off because what they're looking for is like not what they're going to enjoy. What Pierre's saying is a very mature attitude. He used to be really into intense excitement and adventure, and he found the joy within was what he really wanted, and that he's happy with that. And he's not going off looking for the kicks. And that really wasn't the case with the Beatles. And perhaps we should do a Beatle tour, because I'm threatening my own talk by talk. I wasn't going to hardly mention them, and I ended up mentioning them. So again, can I ask anybody here who's spoken or not spoken to field a question or an objection or anything to what I've said? Come on.
Go ahead. Ask your question.
Hello, Ingemar here.
Hi.
Sweden. I have to say that the Beatles infected me in a way that I started meditation because they had started, and also the Rolling Stones, because I was into music very much. I played guitar and in a pop group or a rock group or whatever you call it. So I also did a drug bit, but actually I was inspired by the guy who talked about team was on the same course as Beatles. His name was Bernd Schneider. He was a German guy, and he was sitting at the far left. If you see the big picture, when they are sitting in front of Maharishi, the Beatles, and all their wives and so, there is a guy who has no white clothes on, just brown clothes. It's the Swedish guy on the far left. You can see him. So he was doing the talk when it was after 1970 when they have the rock concert in Malmö in Sweden. They started their 1970 tour, the Rolling Stones. So after that concert, I got a small message by two beautiful girls. Actually, one of the girls I get involved with later on. So there was a bit love in there also. And the note says, now you have just listened to a rock concert, or going to be listen to a rock concert. What is happiness? Is happiness to have a friend in the sack, smoke a pipe of hash, or listen to rock music. If you don't know what happiness is, come and listen to transcendental meditation. So I went after a week or two, something like that. But I don't regret that, because it set me on a straight part in a way.
Yeah.
And took me away from the drug part. So
I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on who you are, what time you grow up,
Yes.
and in what circumstances. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That That's okay for me. I don't have to talk more.
Brilliant. I've remembered I haven't shown my photos, have I? So here is the growth of Indianism. Possibly the Beatles' best album was Revolver, and that had Love You Too, which had George Harrison's sitar work on it. This is a clip from the film I was talking about, the BBC film Alice in Wonderland. Did anybody see it? Am I talking to myself here? Hello, did anybody see?
Yeah,
Yes, I can see it. Yes, yes.
But I only
I
see
can
the all the collection, but not one single picture.
And this is Ravi Shankar writing the music to the film, and this is Anne-Marie Malik, the Alice, holding a pig, who is a baby in it. This is obviously what it is. This was the Beatles, and they're bringing in the Indian personalities out of Autobiography of a Yogi. This is a shop in Nepal. That was one of the reasons that people wanted to travel to India. It was to get legal hash, and as this says, marijuana. So for quite a long time, you could go to Nepal, to Kathmandu, and go shopping for your smoking supplies. Now, here's a picture of Jack Bruce out of the Cream rock group, the rock blues jazz group, and he's playing a veena. And sitting by him is Janet, his wonderful wife at that time, and he's taken up with the Indian music as well. And he actually got so into the veena that he found his own technique on bass guitar. He actually extracted the methodology of playing the veena and transferred it to his own bass playing. And so
Paul,
that's handy.
Paul, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, can you screen down the screen, please? We don't see the photos on the bottom.
Well, you can't see the whole of him.
No, we
But
just see the first 3 rows of photographs, and the fourth is cut in the middle. So you have to roll down so we can see the next sequence.
So you can't actually see what I'm seeing, which is just one image.
No, we see. In order for us to see each image, you have to click on it.
Can you see just one image now?
No, we just see the screen with all the photographs until first 3 rows and a half.
That is puzzling because I've done this before and it worked.
Are you clicking on the photo? If you click on the photo individually, it should pop up.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, no, we not see it.
Oh, that's unfortunate. That is really amazing because it worked before.
Yeah.
Every time I've done it. So, So now you can see lots on one screen, no?
Yes, until the 4th row, and then it's cut in half because you have to screen down so you can see the next sequence of photos.
Okay, so you can see what I can see there. 4 rows by 4 rows, yeah?
Yes, 4 rows, 4 photographs, 4 rows. But the 4th one is cut in the middle. So you have to screen down so we can see it. Okay, now we see everything.
Yeah, right, so you see everything. So now I'm going to click on one of them and we'll see what happens. Can you see Jack Bruce and Janet Bruce?
No, not individually. We can see it in the photo.
That's
Very
amazing.
little, but we can see it, yeah.
You can't see just one picture there.
No, we cannot see just one picture.
Oh, how annoying.
Can you increase the screen so at least we could see the photos a little bit?
It says 100% at the moment.
Okay. All right.
What? Oh, I was going to mention this whole loads of visual prompts I'm getting from looking at these. Do you remember Axis Bold as Love, Jimi Hendrix's second album? Well, that came out with a picture of him dressed as Lord Vishnu with all attendants, and that wasn't his wish. He actually wanted an Indian on the cover, and the graphic designer thought that he meant India as in India. So that's why that was happening. So
Somebody writes, you have to pick the window you want to share.
no, I've done it, but it's not working for you. Is that showing my books?
Yes.
We see
Yes, the
just
first
the
photograph
collection.
on the, yeah.
We just see the collection, but not the single pictures.
What do you say now?
The collection.
No, that's amazing. Well, that's a technological blip, because I've done the same thing before and it's not working this time. I wonder why that is. So there's nothing to do about it. I'm not going to get stressed about it.
David writes, you have to pick. Oh no. Yes. An easy fix is to share the entire desktop.
Yeah. So you're not seeing individual images?
Not yet.
Oh, there we go. Just like that.
Oh.
No? Still not?
No, unfortunately.
Well, you've missed lots of nice pictures, and I'll blame it on you lot. Because I can't possibly blame myself for this one, because I had it all sorted out. No, but seriously, perhaps we can add some of those images afterwards, but perhaps not. Who knows?
Miguel wanted to ask you something.
Yeah, good. Go ahead, Miguel.
So my question is this: the influence of Indian spirituality in the West in the arts, either Hindu or Buddhist origin, has always been a fascinating topic for me. And I love your book because of that, because you really bring forth a lot of stuff that I never knew. So and I didn't saw in anywhere. But what I would like is to find a book that tells the full story. You have bits and parts here and there, but you don't have the full story. For example, the influence of Indian spirituality and jazz, right? That's also profound. You have John Coltrane and his wife Alice Coltrane and Charles Dominguez and John McLaughlin. So it's just, it's unbelievable story, but no one is telling the full story. You just have bits here and there. So I was just wondering that maybe you could pick up that challenge. You're so knowledgeable and write a book about it, because I've been trying to find for years and I just cannot find a single book that tells the whole story.
I mean, I've had about a week to contemplate the 60s and its effects. And to be honest, I haven't given it a lot of attention, because it's like, it's not how I work. I just let ideas settle and rummage around in my head. And I realized that you know, I don't know how it's been for other people. And your comments are really accurate. You know, you're coming from a specific space. And as is Roland, Roland's talking about the literature and you're talking about the music, of which I'm sadly ignorant. You know, I have my specialities, which they're not intellectual and they're mainly about my own enthusiasms. I mean, I was talking earlier about the Indo Jazz Suite. I mean, I personally found that one of the most exciting records I ever heard in my life. And therefore, that's why I include it. And that's why I play it. And that's why I'm going to play another track. But can anybody really do what you're suggesting, Miguel? Can anybody really wrap it all up? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe
I'm
it
working.
will be fascinating to read. You know, it will be just like
Sure. I'm as you know, I'm working on the full story of Gurudev, and that's what I'm tasked to do at the moment.
how it's going.
Huh?
How it's going. It's going well.
It's astonishing because the more that I work at it, the more the tumblers go into place, you know? It's like you think you know a story, but if you're a detective, the story is only what other people want you to know. And as a detective, you have to listen to all their stories. You have to listen to all the witness reports. You have to go through them with a fine-tooth comb. Then you have to go for a walk. Then you have to go for a holiday. You go through all sorts of processes. And then two things join together, and then three things join together. And what I find is that I've been working on this particular book for about 2 years now, right? And it's like, it's astonishing. I'm working on the last, I think, 7 or 8 chapters collectively at the moment. I've got the main body of the book done. And I'm now working on how his followers interacted with each other, what they were up to. And only in the last week or two have I discovered what was really going on. I had all the pieces, I couldn't put them together. So it's not, if I was to apply that to talking about John Coltrane and, you know, John McLaughlin and people, I mean, I'd have an uphill task. If I can't do this, you know, in 2 years, that I see it stretching out many, many more months. It's quite a challenge to think of myself wading into a territory which I'm inexperienced. I mean, I could do that with the pop stuff. I could do that with the Beach Boys and Donovan and the Beatles, but I think I did, didn't I? I mean, I could dig a bit deeper, but I find it difficult to do that much of a job on the jazzos, and probably there's somebody else, just the right person to do it, Miguel, really.
Somebody is playing a sitar music right now.
Pardon?
There's a sitar sound in the background.
You not like it?
No. Oh yes. Did you? Did you start it?
Yeah, that's not me.
Intentionally.
Indo Jazz Suite.
Okay, fine.
It's one of my favorite records, and I'm just kind of trying to infect you guys with it. Bad, aren't I? But yeah, I think there's so much more work to do, Miguel. I've written, what, 10 or 12 books. I have 2 coming out, so I include those. And I don't find the output from anybody else. I really don't. Nobody else seems to have kind of applied themselves to any of these subjects. And it's left me bereft of anybody to talk or research with, but it's also given me a niche. So it's a mixed blessing. I never saw myself in a situation where I would be more proficient than other people. My background really didn't lend me to believe that. But now I'm something of an expert. I mean, I get like an invitation to go and talk to people about stuff. It's funny, and they don't know the half of it, and they're inviting me, and it's strange because I still see myself as some crazy hippie, and they see me as some astute academic. It's quite funny, isn't it? Who cares? But yeah, I think there's tons of space for tons of research and tons of writing and tons of challenges. I mean, people don't challenge me enough. You know, I've said once or twice, anybody got anything to say? Or do they want to sort of like say something against what I'm saying? And the more that goes on, the less I get challenged, which could make me very lazy. And it could turn me into a liar. Do you know, I have a Gurudev Facebook, and people no longer ask me where I get my stuff from. They no longer say, "Oh, where did you find that, Paul? You know, where are you quoting from?" I could be quoting from Enid Blyton. They really don't know. I could be making it up, and nobody. I mean, it's a tribute to me in some ways that they trust me, but nobody should trust somebody like that, because I've got a tomfool of a nature that I might actually wind people up. I might sort of say, okay, so you trust me so much. How are you going to cope with this one? And actually translate something which never existed, just make it up. Yeah, that's it could happen. Warning. Seriously, I should have this cut out, this bit. I kind of think that in some ways that I'm really being controversial here, so forgive me, but I think in a way that that's the source of some religious texts. I think people have just gone and made them up and hoping that they could get away with them, written them in the style of an ancient rishi. I mean, it happened here in the UK. Back in the 60s, there was a writer called Lobsang Rampa, wasn't there? Miguel's nodding, but he was just a guy from down the road. He lived in Plymouth. He wasn't a Tibetan at all. He was just making it up.
And he had a major influence on people.
Absolutely.
Huge.
It's absolutely ironic that a man making up stuff in Plymouth, what was he, a plumber or something? He was just a normal tradesman, wasn't he?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and he was writing these expert books on Buddhism without even knowing about it. I mean, but you know, I'm in the same zone, Miguel. It could be me next. I could be the next Lobsang Rampa. It's so, I do actually, I'm not just saying I think it's possible. I think that some religious texts were written in that spirit of, well, I can get away with it. If I say that so-and-so said it 2,000 years ago, people will buy into it. You know? And it's very worrying when you realize that that's how it could possibly have been.
Paul, I just noticed on Facebook, according to Google, the app of the year can teach you Buddhism. I don't know if people can see that if I hold that up, but anyway, apparently the app of the year is Learn Buddhism from Google. I'll post, if you want, I'll post that to your Roots of Tea page. But it's curious what's happening in the world.
Absolutely.
In cyberspace.
And like Miguel said, is that Lobsang Rampa, whoever he was, Robert or John or whatever from Plymouth, had a massive influence. And you know, the fact that it wasn't genuine, the fact that he was masquerading as something that he wasn't, doesn't mean he didn't have an effect. And I think that's in a way what we've been talking about with the 60s is the fact that it was a bunch of crazy guys and girls who were just having fun. Doesn't mean it hasn't had a really positive effect on world consciousness. I mean, I was brought up by my parents, and my father was very much not of his time. He was an activist. He was against fluoridization of water. He was pro-vegetarianism. He was very into ecology. And none of those things were current in those days. People wouldn't have been able to spell most of what he was interested in. And I found that faintly embarrassing. I wanted to just be an ordinary kid. I didn't want to be marked out as being vegetarian or having some crazy idea. And it's strange. No doubt he had his effect back in the early 60s. And it's sort of finally coming round. And I think we're all going to look back from the ethers and say, well, we had a massive effect. And I certainly am happy about that, because the last thing I want to do is that we all just live for nothing. But there you go.
I have got a question. One of the persons who was very important to me as far as this topic today is concerned is Nancy Cook the Herrera.
Oh yeah.
Because she was right at this connection of this crossing of cultures, of the Western culture and the Eastern culture. And she was telling quite cute stories of her being in India in Rishikesh with Maharishi. So it belongs somehow. You know her?
I mean, I've read her stuff. Yes. I don't know. I have mixed feelings. Do you want my honesty count, or do you want me to just say
Yes,
something nice?
of course. She's an SRM lady.
She was a socialite. She was hungry for celebrities. It's funny, she even chastised Maharishi for being interested in celebrities, like as if she wasn't, you know. I don't know. It was all about celebrity culture, and I think that perhaps none of us are celebrities, and we're more comfortable being not celebrities. I think we've come out of an era of celebrity games, and I think that we're solidifying the idea of individuals being good and them having something good to contribute to society. I haven't got it in for her, but I'm not a massive fan of Nancy, no. Not massive. I mean, her son went tiger hunting. I'm not a massive fan of tiger hunting either. And what can you say?
Yes, the Beatles composed a song about
That's right.
this thing, you know.
But it was more the hatred of him that he'd gone there to shoot tigers. Yeah, I mean, they were pretty repulsed by his having gone on this. And he took his mum, didn't he? That's part of the song, that in case of accident, he even took his mum. So I'm with John on that. I'm not a big John fan, but I'm with John on that. I really abhor animal hunting for sport, and that's another thing that's become a very current thing.
I would like to say we have been now.
Yeah, we've been here lots, haven't we?
Quite a long time already. Yeah. I just can share with you the experience of. I wanted to get out of Europe, and I didn't manage to get to India in those years. I landed up in Cape Town. But there I met a teacher, David Fisk, who was in India, and he taught the transcendental meditation technique there, and I learned it there, and I was motivated to become a teacher of meditation. But let me say, maybe we should make a kind of stop now for the talk today.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I just apologize that I didn't get my pictures shown on the screen more efficiently. But I did repeat what I did in the past, and it worked in the past. So who knows? But it doesn't. It's your loss, not mine, because I've seen all the pictures myself.
Right.
And
Well,
perhaps they'll get edited into it. Well, it's just the fact that I didn't talk about all the slides. That's the only problem. So if they get edited in, they might get edited in without all the information about them. Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah. Okay, we are all learning this technical stuff.
Yeah, but basically it's not a slideshow. It was about telling you the stuff, and the pictures are subordinate. They are. It doesn't really matter. And as I say, perhaps, and I'm not promising it. Perhaps we could do a talk on the Beatles in India sometime. I don't know if anybody really wants to hear it. It's not the most interesting thing to talk about, but it's, for many people, it's a mysterious period because they just disappeared into India, and like I know what happened.
Well, it would be a great thing, even though you mean nobody's interested in the Beatles story, but it would be a story, and I would very much appreciate it, and I'm sure there are quite a few people who would be happy to listen to that.
But the thing is, I've done 3 talks now, and I need to know what my next talk is. Otherwise, I can't say anything.
We can think about that, Paul. But for today,
that sounds ominous. We can think about that.
But for today, allow me to say thank you very much, Paul.
And thank you, everybody,
for this talk, and thank you for all those who have been questioning you and
only
commenting.
one person left. They wrote me a note saying, "Sorry, I've got to go." So it's unbelievable. We've been together for all this time, and you've not nodded off, or well, perhaps somebody has. But
there is a last question. There is a last question somebody wrote. Hi, Paul. I joined late. Did you indicate what, if any, relationship you have with the TIA movement?
I'm not aware that I have a relationship. I can't really deny it. If you told me what relationship that is, I'd say show me the pictures. But seriously, no, I've never really had much of a relationship with the organization. I work for them for a brief time as a volunteer in their London office. And then we had a deputation arrive called the World Planners. And they're a bunch of obnoxious farts. And I soon realized that I didn't want to be around people who were throwing their weight around and were so fixated with their own sense of self-importance. And therefore I left and got myself a regular job again, which was inevitable at some time, but it just hastened it up. And then I kind of never went back. The only time I went back to anywhere like the organization was to do research on my book on the Maharishi. And I just turned up and I discreetly asked the occasional question, not telling anyone that I was actually writing a book. But I think that meditation is an individual thing. I think everybody here is either a meditator or they're interested in meditation. It's not something owned by an institute. It's not something that can be dispensed by an institute. I know that Maharishi set up the movement, but I think the way of people teaching it independently and teaching teachers independently is a healthy, very healthy prospect. And it's totally in line with Indian customs. I mean, you know, if I were in the jungle in the Himalayas and somebody said to me, "You look as though you're ready to learn a meditation technique," I wouldn't say, "Oh, what organization do you belong to? Have they given you permission? Can I see your diploma? Has it been signed? And is there a revenue that your people get? I mean, I've met a fair amount of people in India. I've been fortunate, perhaps we ought to talk a bit about that, but I've been fortunate in some of the places and the people that I've met out in India. And the idea that anybody owned anything to do with spirituality is unspeakably laughable. And I can understand Maharishi trying to make sure that what he was teaching went on like that it didn't get distorted. But that's, it's clearly beyond his control. And it happened almost immediately on his first international course in 1961 in Rishikesh. Dr. Rolls met Swami Shantanand, who was the then Shankaracharya of Jyotir Math. And he thought, oh, hang on, I've met the Shankaracharya. I think I'm going to move away from Maharishi and you have a direct correspondence with the Shankaracharya. Now, the Shankaracharya was totally approving of Maharishi's mission, and he advocated learning that style of meditation. But he was happy to take on Dr. Rolls's ideas, and that persisted. And there's umpteen recordings of Shantanand and that study group. And so in other words, even at that time, so early in the movement, Maharishi wasn't able to control the splintering effect, the idea that people were going to go and do something other than what he wanted them to do. And in fact, many people were introduced to meditation because of that break off, because those people who broke off, they put posters throughout the London Underground, and you couldn't walk through the London Underground without seeing their posters. And, I think it had a subliminal effect. Each time you went past a poster, oh, meditation, meditation. And, oh, meditation again. And I puzzle, how did I get interested in meditation? I think it had something to do with the London Underground, So, it's pervasive. And I think if the future is going to be positively affected by meditation, it's got to be available to all. And it can't be like franchised. It can't be like limited. It's just too ridiculous. So I'm only too happy that people have the courage of their convictions to go and teach independently and follow through and care about the people that they've been taught. And the question was, what do I have to do with the Transcendental Meditation organizations? It's like nothing, but I hope that they love me, because I'm on their side if they're on the side of proliferating meditation, and I say nice things about Maharishi quite often. Who knows? Perhaps they've got a voodoo doll with fuzzy hair, which they keep stabbing with a pin. I don't know. I don't know what my relationship is with them. I did have a phone call from one of the Rajas, and he phoned me up for 2 hours, and we kept interrupting each other, and then he shut me up and he said, I just want to apologize, what the movement did to you. And I thought, oh, I won't ask what they did to me, but like, it's nice to be apologized to. An apology is always good. You don't look an apology in the teeth, do you?
Thank you, Paul. It sounds a good roundup, what you just said. And once more, actually, before we ask, should we have 10 minutes meditation? And I would like to say thank you, Paul, for this very tremendous insight of this getting together of the two cultures, especially for England and India, and you personally being involved at the center of this experience and having given us your personal experience and I just wanted to say, yeah, once more, it's been a great talk. And also
Thank you for helping me.
And also for those who have been putting in some questions.
Yeah.
So if you agree, then it would be a very nice thing to have a group meditation, an online group meditation right now. Not long, just for 10 minutes. Do you agree? So let's have it, you know, and we just start our meditation. I don't need to say how. Let's close our eyes for 10 minutes and I call you up after that time. Jay, you ready to start? So now we're starting the slideshow to a talk of Paul Mason. Because of technical reason, it was in the first instance not possible. We kind of apologize, but it works, I think, now. Paul, please, have a go.
Let's see if we can find it this time. Right. Can you see the first image, Roland?
Yes.
Well, this is just a bunch of my books. It's most of my books, but not all of them, I think. I'm writing a couple at the moment, putting a couple of books together, so we'll leave that one. This is the small bronze that my uncle gave me as a child, and he couldn't tell me why he'd given it to me, but obviously that impressed me as a child to be given something like that. Here's the statue out of the Help movie. The Beatles film featured this large statue somewhere in the story. Here's a picture of Paul McCartney on set in the Help movie. And if you look in the background, you can see a guy walloping the drums. You could say that was a tabla set. And here's actually Paul McCartney playing a sitar, not George Harrison yet, but it seems that Paul McCartney was the one to get hold of the sitar first. Here's the cover of the music that I was playing earlier, the Indo Jazz Suite, which I'm raving about. I was raving about then, I still am. And Revolver, which was a pretty nifty record. It was the first Beatles record where they really experimented, and there was a fair bit of Indian sounds on that. Here's a shot out of the Alice in Wonderland I was talking about by Jonathan Miller, 1966, starring Anne-Marie Malik. This was the only acting role that she ever performed. She went on to do something in finance, nothing to do with films at all. And here's Ravi. Ravi, at that time, wasn't very well known at all. I mean, he was known in classical music circles, but he wasn't known generally. Fortunately, I got to see him after some time in the early 70s. And I was sitting with my girlfriend, and she said, "Oh, he plays like you," which was one big compliment, because he's like a master of sitar, and really I could never play sitar, so that was nice. And I actually met Ravi later that day, and we had a chat, and it was very pleasant. He's a nice little guy, really fun to be with. Here's Anne-Marie Malik nursing the baby, but actually the baby is a piglet, if you look carefully. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I mean, you can see, even before this was released, before they met Maharishi, you can see the influence, Indian influence. You can see the various characters out of the autobiography of a yogi, if you look carefully enough. Right, and here's a slide showing you an advertisement for a shop in Kathmandu. So it's like ample proof that you could actually buy hashish, and how do you spell that? Marijuana, legally in Kathmandu in those days. This is Jack Bruce out of the Cream. He played bass in Cream, as everybody's probably aware. He's sitting there with his wife Janet and trying to master the Veena for a little bit. And he actually adopted the style of playing the Veena with the pressing the index finger. And he talked about this later in his career, how he'd been interested in the Veena and did that. His son Malcolm, I think, rediscovered the Veena. I don't know too much about that. Anyway, this is a picture of some actual hashish. Anybody remembers back in the day? That's what it looked like back in the 60s. It's not my hashish, by the way. It's just a photograph I picked up. This is the beautiful packaging of some incense, which was one of the attractions for me. I used to puzzle over the packaging.
Paul, you have to wait from one slide to the other a little bit, because it takes time till it comes over. Now it's here.
Okay. Thank you for telling me that. Yeah, back in those days, I used to dwell on the packets of incense long before I went to India. And in fact, some of them were multiple sheets of textbook paper and exercise book paper from Indian books and so forth. So one of my first influences of Indian writing, the text, was actually from these packets. Can you see this one? Is that showing, Roland?
Yes, it's on, yes.
It takes a while. Okay, this is Rolling Stones, if you didn't realize. A couple of them were initiated into Transcendental Meditation. Mick Jagger went up to Bangor along with the Beatles. Brian Jones got interested too. He joined Maharishi later in Amsterdam and got interested in meditation. As for the other Stones, I really don't know. You can tell me. Please write. Jimi Hendrix. Now, an album came out by Jimi Hendrix, his second album called Axis Boulder's Love. And although the graphic artist...
Just a moment for Jimi Hendrix, please, to come up.
It hasn't come up.
Not yet, no. I still see the Stones. Now it's here. Jimi Hendrix. Wonderful.
That's an amazing time lag. It's
Yes.
as if we're broadcasting through the ethers. Okay. Well, it's good to know. Well, Jimmy, he had an interest in India, but of course he had American Indian roots. His grandmother was a Cherokee Indian. So he was actually talking about American Indian imagery for this album, and this is what they gave him. But of course, we didn't complain because it was all mysterious and wonderful to us. Everybody knows that Mia Farrow went to India, and that was to some extent led by her sister, Prudence Farrow.
A moment, please. A moment. Yeah, now it's here.
Prudence was interested in yoga and meditation long before Mia Farrow. And here's a photograph of her back in 67, in November 67, with her yoga instructor, Swami Satchidananda, who appeared at Monterey Pop Festival, did he not? Oh, no, he didn't. No, he didn't, did he? You tell me, Roland. It was
I don't know. No, I don't know. Sorry.
I didn't really seriously get into any of these gurus, the ones that appeared in the West. So I don't have anything much to say about them. Okay. has the next picture come up yet?
Not yet, no.
The poster. Okay, I'll wait for it.
Yeah, just a moment. So now it's here.
Great. This is a poster by Hatch Hash and the Colored Coat, and it shows the kind of prevalent trends in those days in 1967 to use Indian imagery and also Art Deco imagery. And Michael English, the lead artist of the duo of him and Nigel Weymouth, he was a really gifted artist. He did many beautiful posters. I've got another picture coming up which shows him and some of his posters.
It was a wonderful graphic. Wonderful. Yes.
I had the pleasure to talk to him once, and the strange thing about it was he was very self-deprecating about his ability. He saw himself as having failed to get into a good art school, but me, I'm seeing him as one of the top artists. And it's funny how people have their kind of neurosis, their fears, and he wanted to be accepted by the establishment. It was strange, but it was good to chat with him. Is the next image up yet?
Yes, Donovan.
Yeah, Donovan. Well, this is where we first saw a picture of Maharishi. Those of us who were popsters, here he is holding Donovan's hand. And in fact, when I met Donovan, he held my hand for most of the time that we were talking, which was very intimate and touching. And I wonder whether he picked up the habit from Maharishi or vice versa. But it's unusual. And at this time, I didn't even know that Donovan was meditating or that Maharishi taught meditation. And I don't think other people did either. It's just like, oh, that's interesting. There's this guy that Donovan likes on the cover of the record. Simple as that.
Which song did he compose about of Maharishi?
Well,
there's a song he composed.
He actually composed a couple. One called Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, which was never released, because he also recorded another. He wrote another song called Hurdy Gurdy Man out in India. And in the eventuality, he decided he didn't actually write it for himself. He wrote it for a friend of his who had got a group called Hurdy Gurdy. And one thing led to another. And Donovan didn't actually give them the song. He actually recorded it himself. So there you go. Life's like that. But another artist that brought Maharishi through the music was the Canned Heat, one of my favorite all-time favorite bands, LA blues group. And I remember them, Bob the Bear extolling the audience, saying, "Yeah, sit back and meditate," as Maharishi said. And of course, they had. Do you remember that? And there was a little bit of Indian music on one of their tracks, On the Road Again. They had a tampura backing.
Yeah, Canned Heat was just fabulous.
Yes. I've actually written up their history. It's online. It's one of my fascinations, of which I have many. So yeah, Canned Heat were brilliant. It's what made me want to play in a group. Listening to them, I thought, you know, they're so comfortable playing what they're playing, and I'm comfortable playing what they're playing. And we ended up forming a group, myself and some friends. Do you see the next image?
Yes.
This is Michael English sitting on the floor, Nigel Weymouth in the middle. And that's just some of their beautiful posters. And if he had a problem wondering whether he was a good enough artist, I don't know. It's monstrous.
They were just so wonderful.
Yes.
You know, I really loved them, and I wasn't the only one. You know,
No.
this kind of posters, they inspired so many young people in those
I think
years.
so.
Yes.
And a lot of them were actually advertising events, specific gigs. He's got one down on the floor, which is orange and gold. I have that in a frame downstairs, and it gets quite a lot of comments. You know, people kind of go, "Oh wow!" I've got a couple of, I've got a few posters by them actually.
I also made a graphics in that style of those years.
Right.
Yes.
I tried. I never finished it, Roland. I kept coming back to it. I never finished it, which was bad of me.
I will show it to you later on.
Great. I kept getting distracted. Do you see this image?
Yes.
One with Maharishi on. Right. So in the spirit of everybody wanting posters, there was this advertisement for one of Maharishi amongst other people. And it's funny to see at the top, it says, the love of the guru. Well, of course, Maharishi didn't actually claim to be a guru. And in fact, in those days, nobody knew what a guru was. We really hadn't been exposed to Indian thinking, most of us. And the word guru and the word mantra and the word yogi, they were all very foreign. So I, along with just about everybody else, didn't have a clue what was being said. Yeah, well, it's a confession. It's also a kind of observation of the time. Do you see the next image?
Yeah, George Harrison, The Wall.
What a fantastic movie. It was so imaginative. And George Harrison, he wasn't the first person to be asked to create that music, but he really threw himself into it. And he got a stopwatch and he sat there watching the movie and he counted off each scene that needed how much music. And he thought about it and thought about it. And he used friends to do like Western style instruments, guitars, drums, and all and so forth. And he went to India and he did all the Indian stuff in Bombay. And it was amazing. And I think the artist who designed this record is kind of, he's kind of caught the essence of what was going on, the sort of duality between this sort of watcher who's uninvolved watcher and the kind of exotic sounds, the exotic images that were coming up through the walls. It's a funny concept. It's actually one of my all-time favorite films, along with the Alice film, but it's just a matter of taste. One of the pieces of music that George put together in Bombay was the Inner Light. Do you see the image now?
Yes, wonderful.
That's the sheet music, which is kind of stupid because you don't really need sheet music for something like that. But I mean, Indians seldom try and write down the way they play, and I'm sure that sheet of music and never actually displayed how it was played. Probably tracked the voice, said what he was singing. As I said in the talk, this was actually a verse out of the Tao Te Ching. It wasn't actually written by George. And yeah, the Beach Boys had got involved. The whole lot of them, one by one, they got interested in meditation, went to see Maharishi and got taught. And they were very enthusiastic to sort of go on tour with him. And so this was an advance notice of that, which came out in February 1968. And in fact, they did have the tour. So that's that. Out in India, Donovan and the Beatles, they did end up playing some just casually with the other attendees, the other course participants, and of which there was also Paul Horn, the flautist, who is absolutely brilliant. He used to play with Donovan sometimes. The guy who played tablas, who played with Donovan sometimes. Obviously, the Beatles were all there, and they contributed to the music sometimes. I've got quite a lot of that music actually on tapes that I was gifted, particularly George Harrison and Donovan. There's even one song where Maharishi participates. He comes in on the chorus and he tries to join in. which is hilarious, actually. Let's be honest, it's hilarious.
You mean Maharishi singing?
Yes.
Great.
That's in my back pocket. I've got all sorts of audio wonders, honestly. Quite a lot of Donovan, which he'd probably like to hear, but I didn't mention it to him when we met because I hadn't got them when we met. Okay, now I remember. But John Lennon was interested in the way that Donovan played, so Donovan taught John Lennon his style, and here's evidence of that photograph I was given. Here's more proof that George Harrison was just playing sitar. He wasn't playing guitar in those days, and here he is sitting with his sitar instructor on the course, and they're playing together. And as I just said, I have a tape recording of them playing for quite a long time. Yeah, so there's Maharishi and Satyanand listening to them and watching them.
Very nice.
Yeah, yeah. I was gifted these photographs. They're actually taken by Charlie Lutz, who was head of the movement at that time, and his representative gifted me a load of images from that course and other courses. Really, really nice of him. I haven't quite decided what to do with them yet. So they were all playing about with different instruments. Patty Boy was playing with the Dilruba. She was given that for her birthday present. She had a birthday while she was out in India. Jane Asher and Paul McCartney, as you know, were also out there. And here, have you seen the next image? Am I running it?
Yeah, yes.
So here's Paul again rummaging around on an Indian instrument. He's very underrated. I mean, he was very, very into making explorations of sound. It was largely him that generated the idea of having loop tapes, backward loop tapes on Beatles records. I know he's famous, and I know he's like, well, he's the first British billionaire, but he's not acknowledged enough for being creative, and I admire that. Yeah, we spoke for a moment, hurdy-gurdy man, and here's a copy of the record, which we probably all remember well. Actually, yeah. Donovan wanted Jimi Hendrix to play on that one, but he didn't get him. Okay, we don't know who played on it. They say it was Jimmy Page, but it's not really known who played on it. But it was supposed to be Jimmy, which it's a nice idea. Another person who made a lot of musical contribution, who's also a meditator, in fact, I believe all the Moody Blues were, was Justin Hayward, who's actually, I've seen him about here. He lived in Cornwall for quite a long time, and he still comes back to visit his daughter. The Moody Blues put together a package of very thoughtful music when they first learned to meditate, and some of that sort of squeezed out onto the cover, where there's this picture of a yantra, a visual sort of mantra with an explanation of how to use it. But I mean, most of it at that time hadn't got a clue what we were being shown, and couldn't do much other than go, oh, that's interesting, and get on with our lives. I think it's taken decades for us to start wondering what these things are really about.
But that was the time that we were just so astonished by all these wonderful covers of the LPs.
Yes. Yes.
And they were almost half the story of the
yes.
Of the music.
In fact, sometimes more than half the story.
Yes.
I would actually go as far as say there were occasions when I just wanted the cover. That's it. And another cover. This is, I mentioned Lemmy earlier. And he played normal guitar in a group called the Sam Gopal. Well, it was called the Sam Gopal Dream. Sam Gopal is the Indian-looking guy. He's actually Malaysian, and he played tablas. So it was quite an unusual format for a group to actually have standard players, bass drums, guitar, and a tabla player, but they sounded good to me. The magazine that I was mentioning, Gandalf's Garden, which was brought to us by a guy called Muzz Murray, that was about the most mystical piece of writing going on in London at that time. You had the occasional article about spiritual things, about retreats, about, you know, kind of alternative ideas, which was drip feeding me. I hadn't read anything like that before. And that was the second issue. There was a bit of really decent graphics, I think you'll agree. That's John Herford's graphics, just in case you're interested. He was another unsung hero of the graphic scene in those days. I think in the talk I mentioned Quintessence. Quintessence were the most Indian sounding group of that time. They really came up in 1969, and they seemed to spend about half their time in Britain getting on with playing and working, and the other 6 months of the year out in India. So they obviously had a massive investment in India, which is what this talk was about, as I recall. As I said, I met Donovan accidentally and ended up buying a guitar off him, which is lying there, and he actually wrote Jay Gurudev on it. And it was a nice meeting with Donovan.
Yeah, it's very nice, very nice picture of you.
His road manager took a whole sequence of them, which I have, but it was an unexpected meeting. I hadn't intended to meet him, and it was arranged by his road manager, so I didn't fight it, and we chatted a while. I should have made more of it. I should have said, "Oh, will you do an interview or what?" I didn't even think of it until the next day. Too late.
Yes.
But part of meeting Donovan was that it's a kind of strange thing happened to me while he was shaking hands with me. I had a sensation in my head where I saw a whole load of photographs going through inside my head, which is like a strange claim, but it actually happened. And they were rippling, and I was looking at these photographs while he was talking to me, and I could see pictures of the Beatles and so forth in India. And in the days that followed meeting Donovan, I started to think, do you know what? Somebody should write the book about Donovan and the Beatles in India, because they haven't, and it's an interesting story, it must be. And I tried to encourage a writer friend of mine to cover that story, and he didn't. And I sat there thinking what to do about the idea, and then it dawned on me that it was actually supposed to be me that writes that book. And that's
I think Donovan and you, he must have sensed some sort of wavelength you sharing, the two of you.
I don't know. It was a good thing. I wouldn't have written this book had I not met Donovan. So if you're listening, Don, thank you for the impulse. And it was such a magical process writing the book, because people who were on the course with the Beatles came forward and shared memories, shared recordings, shared photographs. And I felt for a lot of the time as if I was actually on the course, albeit like a spider or a fly on the wall. But it's an illusion, but I got so intensely involved with the writing of it that I actually felt that I've been there. And coincidentally, today somebody's just asked me to join a podcast about that course in India and the Beatles. So hopefully I'll be doing that in the next few weeks. So I think that's about it with regards to the. Oh no, one more. I did hitchhike to India, as I think I mentioned on the talk, and I stayed for about a month in Rishikesh. And a friend of my father's suggested that I really ought to write a book about having hitchhiked. And I thought at the time, no, I wouldn't. I thought that was a rather old-fashioned idea, writing books about doing things. But actually, I ended up agreeing, and you know, I eventually wrote this book, which was, it might be boring, I don't know, I really wouldn't know, but for me, it was the story of going on the road day by day, sticking out my thumb, and eventually landing in Rishikesh, which was a bit of a dream haven. It was my Shangri-La, and to be honest, it could have been anybody's Shangri-La. It was such a peaceful, beautiful, calm place. And they'd only had one piece of crime in known in history, and that was of an elephant strangling a man. So they didn't really know crime in that area. So you can imagine an area which didn't know crime as being rather peaceful. I think that's about it. I think that's it. Yep. Back to the first image. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Roland, for holding my hand through that lot.
Well, and, I see these many books you have written, and those who look and see this video, just remember you can obtain these books from Paul Mason. Yes. You can obtain this, and I've got at least 2 of them. And
only.
Only, yes, I'm ashamed.
I've got them all. This is my shelf. But there'll be more. I've translated another one in that series, the 3 orange books on Gurudev. I actually have another translation done. I'm just ironing out the kinks of it. And I'm writing a full biography of Gurudev. That's Swami Brahmananda Saraswati, the former Shankaracharya of Jyotirma. It's definitely been the most difficult book to compile. People go and buy them online. They go to Amazon or any other internet bookstore